Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church weekly podcast, a conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey, Ephrata Community Church, so great to be with you here. We're here on a Monday. We don't know when you're listening to this, but we want you to know that it is wonderful that you give us some time to chat a little bit more about what's taking place in general here at Ephrata Community Church, but specifically in our weekend experience. Man, I just thought it was wonderful, the announcement Kevin made. We saw 20 people give their life to Jesus two weekends ago. I mean, between Lifeway and here, and believe me, I was at Lifeway. And now my message had a particular gospel orientation, but just the response, I saw an entire family stand. Yeah. And you could tell, like, the Lord was on them, bringing them as a family to finally nailing it down with the Lord. So I just love it when we can celebrate stuff like that going on in the region. Isn't it good stuff?
Well, not only that, but I think, the dynamic of a guest speaker, for lack of a better term, but the dynamic of having a guest speaker that's actually really relationally connected.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why, it just always seems to be enough of a change in a community that it allows the Holy Spirit sometimes to do things.
Yeah, I think it gives him a different set of tools. And the work. The surgery is the same in a sense, but the hands on it are different. And man, the Lord just does something with it.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, but hey, back to Kevin. Kevin is, I just love what Kevin's carrying around this series, the wonder of Christmas and of God, particularly around light. I mean, this is 2 sermons in a row where he wanted to talk about light. And I know you were particularly impressed with some of the metaphors and stuff. I mean, he's pulling out passages where Jesus is using very clear metaphors, like you're talking salt, you're talking light, you're talking city on a hill. Yep. And Jesus has got a point to make, but you particularly, like me, I love the stuff that was going around light this weekend.
Yeah, and to root it in John 1, which,
which is where the Lord rooted it.
Where the Lord
certainly the Apostle John rooted it.
Is great. But, John 1, I have it here, John 1:5, right? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
And in verse 4, and his life was the light of
That's
man.
Right.
Come on, man, yes. My life is the light you all need, right?
Yeah, and even, Isaiah 9:2, right? People walking in darkness have seen a great light. And, Kevin, being honest, like it can. I think we've been there historically, not just in our country, but over the arc of time, in dark times. And I don't know if everyone, or even me all the time, but there can be times where you're just like, man, it just feels like we need light to break in. And so it's a very, very relatable thing. And as we enter Christmas, to think, okay, let's not just get wrapped up in the pageantry of Christmas. Let's actually talk about the reality that in dark times, light shines bright. Yeah. And then say, okay, so now where did Jesus say that light comes from? From you.
That's right.
From you, from us.
That's right. So, yeah, and I think, I've oftentimes heard, Kevin pointed this out too, that, hey, the nativity stories in in Luke and Matthew are way different than John's. John's is a nativity story in the same way that Genesis 1 is a creation nativity story. God's first words, let there be light. And so for John to start off with, hey, can I show you a whole other understanding of the nativity? The light came and shone in the darkness couldn't take it in, and darkness couldn't overcome it, the original says. So it's a lot of beauty there. I do also think that, Kevin's reminder that, hey, almost I heard him saying, like, keep light alive in your life. All it takes is a little light to drive back darkness, right? Yeah. So even in low times, etc., care for those kind of smoldering embers or whatever you want to use of light, because of the power for light to be able to cause us to fixate. And then he turned the lights out in the services. Yep. If you weren't here, it was fun. All the lights went out in the auditorium except the exit signs. Just want to make sure in case OSHA's listening in. All that to say, he lit a lamp, 2,000-year-old lamp that we got from the David Dorsey Museum up at the seminary in Myerstown. Yeah. He lit it, and man, it is true. You go specifically to it. The only thing that was distracting me was in the distance, there was a red blinking camera on the back of the stage.
Yeah, that catches the drums.
But it was
the
same point. Yeah. There was a little light somewhere, and I went straight after it. And I think that's something that we want to hold on to for those people who are carrying promises or hopes or things that they felt that the Lord has spoken into. Man, keep that ember going.
Yeah.
It'll give light to the whole world.
It was a great. Kevin sometimes comes up with these incredible illustrations that drive the point home, and it was fun to turn all the lights off, and you could sense, obviously as service pastor being all three services, you could just sense the way what that did to the room and the way that really had people experience it, and using that ancient lamp, which we thank Dr. Sarah Bollinger and the seminary and Phil for helping us with that, but it's, I don't know, the fact that he said it's an ancient light, and it's, I think it was a great sermon, and it was a challenging one, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. Matter of fact, just before we got on, I said to Dan, like, hey, Dan, don't let me get too heavy here, because I have to tell you the way I experienced the message was, I think it was invitational from the Lord to reflect on it. It's not so much condemnation or even conviction, but Kevin pointed out at the end of his sermon these three potential outcomes, right? Remember, salt, light, city on the hill. But Jesus, for all of them, shares what's sad, if it doesn't take place. So good for nothing. What good is salt that's lost its saltiness?
That's right.
It's good for nothing. It's thrown out and trampled on. I don't know about you, man. I believe there's a lot of wideness in Jesus's mercy, but there are these moments where he's pretty straightforward about something. Like, if you've had saltiness and lost it, particularly be worried, because that is good for nothing, man. That's a big point.
Well, it is, and it drives home the point. And I can remember my dad used to say this to me, and I don't think I quite understood. You know how your dads say things, and you're like, yeah, whatever, But he used to say quite, honestly, hey, don't forget, like, today you may be the only Jesus anyone's ever seen, right? And that's, sometimes a Christianese type thing, but it's a reality.
That's right. Yeah.
We have people listening right now. The places and spaces you occupy on a week-to-week basis, you may actually be the only light that people see.
Yeah, and I think a way that it hit me is, I think my heart went out to a type of person, and that is the kind of person that maybe at one time had a saltiness, or did know how to trim their lamp to last, like the parable or the story of the 10 virgins, right? I think what makes me sad is when that person, either through hurt or trauma or disappointment or whatever, drops back from that saltiness and believes they have enough still for themselves and their family. Yeah. It's a common thing to step away from pressing into God for something for whatever reason, and then you're like, well, you know what? I have enough for my family and me. And this is a little hint from Jesus. You think you have enough, but to have had saltiness and then to have stepped back from saltiness, their reserves will not be there like you think it will be for yourself and your families. And I think that is a fair warning. Again, a little heavier than maybe I want to be at this time, but then these are the words of Jesus warning us, like, woe, like almost woe unto you who once were salty and are not anymore, because you're carrying a skepticism you're sowing into your family without even knowing it.
Yeah,
right?
and it kind of goes to the second point, right? Like, who lights a bushel and or who lights a lamp and puts a bushel over it, or put a covering over it? And I think it's true. I think part of just pastoral ministry is just being honest and saying, hey, listen, like, in many parts of the country, they struggle with different things. And here in central Pennsylvania, we kind of have a history of being able to, and it's not just core to central PA, but here in central PA, we kind of have the ability of shrinking back, of creating these Christian subcultures. And there's an element in which there's the, like, maybe I got burned being salt, so I'm stepping back. Right. But there's also an element of, like, man, safety and just wanting to keep yourself shielded from things is a real experience and a real temptation, but we're not then living out what Jesus has called us to do.
That's right. And whether we're parsing this out fairly or not, I think we are. Kevin said there's these three things that can happen. One is you're good for nothing. Two is irrelevant, which is not quite as bad as being good for nothing, but I'm irrelevant, right? Yeah. I'm bringing no difference. Yeah. Truthfully, either way, it's a strange lukewarmness, right? I'm not hot or cold. I'm just actually irrelevant, and that's striking. But then, of course, his third one is that Jesus is doing with these metaphors is he says this, an outcome is praise and glory to God the Father is the keeper. And I know that when Kevin was sharing about that, I think maybe because the light metaphor was going, I know what it means for light to be reflected. We have this one old lamp in our house where you could put a candle on it, and in front of it, there is a magnifying glass to magnify the light.
Oh, cool.
Right? No, it's pretty cool, man. You've got to imagine like Ben Franklin sitting around, he's going to figure out how to magnify light, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this little panel on the back of it you can turn and actually direct the light in a direction. And I think that is Jesus's invitation to us, and this is, hey, man, I am willing to reflect my glory through you. Mm-hmm. But, man, I just got to make sure that, one, you're magnifying and you are directing it. And this, I think it's an invitation to do that, man. So I know I left thinking, like, Lord, I want to be. Matter of fact, I remember the closing song, just standing there Sunday morning, 8:30, and just having this experience with the Lord, like, Lord, I want light to burst out of me. Yeah. And I want it focused, right? Almost like the way a laser can bring it down and cut something. I'm like, Lord, more of that, right?
Yeah, and it's a great invitation. At the end of the day, in darkness, there's an opportunity. People are looking for answers. And, and around these, though our culture is very secular and there's rhythms that are secular, even in, Jessica and my kids went to a Christmas special because one of our family members went at American Music Theater.
Yeah. I saw that
their
in
Christmas
advertised.
program. Yeah. And, it was very, very secular, but even in there was still a scene or a part of the production that tipped its hat to the manger, tipped its hat to the Christmas story. So, it's still there. And there's an opportunity in this time, if we are intentional about our light shining, to engage people in conversations that don't come up naturally outside of the Christian holidays that still are somewhat dominant within our culture. And so we do have an opportunity during this season.
Oh, man, do we ever. Oh, by the way, speaking of great shows, Rachel and I made the mistake the other night of watching The Chosen's Christmas special. Yeah. And the actual Christmas story is only like 18 minutes in the middle of this hour and 20-minute thing. So you got to be willing to sit through like 30 minutes of music videos by Christian artists you barely know. Really, I'm like, fast forward, God bless it. We cried the entire Christmas story, man. Yeah. Just sat there and I was just mindful that we are in a spot of being so attuned that you even give a little glimpse of what it meant for God to become flesh and come among us. And the spirit inside of us just leaps. So even that little thing at American Music Theater, all you need is that one little story in there, man, and something about the spirit leaps forward and does some amazing things.
Absolutely.
Then at the end of the 18 minutes of actual narrative, Andre Bocelli, the great Italian tenor, blind guy, and his son sang "Oh Holy Night," and they were in tuxedos. I melted. "Oh Holy Night," and the son would sing it in English, and the father would sing it in Italian, and you're sitting there and you're like, "Let it be, man. This is gorgeous."
Yeah. Well, that's speaking of "Oh Holy Night," good segue. It was fun to hear the
historical details.
Hymns. Yeah. And man, that is such a powerful hymn. And to hear the way that God has used that in history and even where it generated from, I think that's fun. I really think it's fun.
Particularly that one. And that's partly why I was alluding to that being there in that series. Kevin opened with reminding us about "Oh Holy Night" and how that song influenced just a little bit, the little light that's in that song, just who it influenced, who it came to know. And then all of a sudden you have Handel's Messiah flowing out of this thing, right? You're like, come on.
So I think that, I meant to, got caught up. I can't make it through the next 2 weeks without listening to that song for a few times, and I can come undone listening to "Oh Holy Night." Powerful hymn. I wonder if we'll sing at Christmas services next week.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're into listening to more stuff, the last 3 weeks, Lifeway, a sister church of ours, did 3 weeks on 3 different hymns. And so very much what Kevin did this morning is echoing what was done the last 3 weeks there. So if you need more listening pleasure, we recommend going that way. But hey, wait, we have more listening pleasure here. There is more, as seen on TV Guide. We just want to make sure that you're aware. Dan, if you have anything else to add about that, this is great, but I'm going into now just looking forward to what's going on.
Go for it.
Hey, Christmas Eve services are coming up. By the way, service of remembrance yesterday afternoon was just wonderful. Man, the biggest crowd I think we've ever had.
I agree.
I think it was 100, maybe even 100 plus. just stopping, slowing down. Very wonderful contemplative service. Great time. This week ends with December 22nd, 3, 5, and 7 o'clock. Please don't show up for the morning services that day. I had several people ask me when I was greeting this weekend, hey, by the way, are the services still on even though there's the special Christmas Eve? No. Services that day, 3, 5, and 7. So please, nothing Saturday night, nothing Sunday morning, but we looking forward to being together. 10,000 cookies. Believe me, there's a lot better motivation for why to come out for the Christmas Eve service. But I'll tell you what, 10,000 cookies never hurts either. So please come spend time with us. Let your friends know if there's a really accessible program that we do during the calendar. It's this one, man. This is one of the most accessible. So it's a chance to invite some friends, families, and neighbors to be able to come out and be a part of it. Hoping and really hoping to see you there on the 22nd. And then, of course, we into the early New Year, we break into our season of prayer and fasting. There's going to be some special previously created podcasts around fasting and why we believe so much of this. Some of those are going to be announced in the e-news. You can go check out. I think Matt and I are talking about fasting, how to prepare for it, what to expect as you do it. But we do, no matter what, we want to invite the entire community into a season of reflectiveness. So we've created a 21-day prayer journal. It's actually 31 days because there's some coaching on fasting at the beginning and then post-reflections on what God might have been saying or doing or how to handle the discernment you might have gotten during that time. We encourage you to pick that up. We have copies here at the church. There's also a digital version online that you can get a hold of as well. Yeah. Pass it around. It'd be really good.
It looks incredible, and I know the content's great because we did it as a team.
Because I read through it while you were service pastoring.
I knew it. I saw it. But no, it looks incredible. I think it's making me. I'm really looking forward to January. But yeah, next weekend's going to be great.
I think
and
so.
You're right. I mean, I would say you want to apply this week's message immediately. Invite somebody to come with you. Don't invite them to come to the service. Invite them to come with you and be their, be their tour guide to navigate ECC and the services. One of the gifts of it, doing it on the 22nd and not on Christmas Eve, is that we are in some ways intentionally moving it away from when a lot of family gatherings and things. So hopefully you have the day to devote not only to the services, but also you'd be able to invite a neighbor, a coworker, someone to come with you. Who knows what God would do.
That's right. That's right. And hey, one little special treat to give you a little bit of a preview. The month of January, we're going to be using the podcast to talk about some of the distinctives of ECC.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
We particularly, and it's going to be good. We particularly are targeting, the number 1, 2, and 3 most attended services that aren't around an event like Prophetic Weekend or a visiting speaker. The top 3 services are right after Christmas here. We have so many people coming to exposure to here. And we're going to be taking our podcast to look at some of the major things they run into that might be unique to them, like words of knowledge being used in the service. We're going to spend a whole 20 minutes just chatting about why that's a value to us. Kids in worship and why we do extended worship compared to some church communities. We're going to be just hitting some of our values, so it's going to be a lot of fun the month of January on the podcast, hitting some of these distinctives. So
yeah,
sounds
if
fun.
You haven't caught on, we're really excited for Christmas and for the new year. We've got a lot coming on. So
bring it on.
Hey, there's a lot to be excited about.
It is. Hey, well, we appreciate you all. We might not see you before Christmas because we're not going to be shooting a podcast next weekend, but we want you to know, happy Advent. May you have times of reflections on the fact that He's coming for you, or that area of your life you're believing for. He is coming for you. And then secondly, Merry Christmas, because the light of the world is here, right? Isn't that good?
So good.
All right.
Amen.
Be well, everyone.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us at EphratahCommunityChurch.com.